So I did it. I actually quit.
And honestly, it wasn't how I imagined it would happen. I always thought I would work till I retired from this company. After all, I didn't want to let my parents and my husband down. Instead, it happened because my body physically wouldn't let me continue. 3 years ago, I started experiencing these weird symptoms. Inflammation spread throughout my body, my hands swelled up and went numb. It started after getting my second booster, but when I went to the doctors, they just shrugged. And I mean rheumatologists, orthopedic surgeons, getting ultrasounds, CT scans, all the blood tests, physical therapy, and numerous visits throughout the year. I still got no explanations, no real solutions, just we're not sure what's causing this. Can you imagine my disdain for this scammy healthcare system? We all knew the reason, but none of the doctors wanted to admit that the vaccine was causing all this newly onset inflammation in my body. I couldn't hold a pen properly, couldn't type without pain and swelling. In my office, they just wanted me back at my desk. Like, I get it from their perspective. They had deadlines, projects, all that stuff. But I'm sitting there unable to perform basic functions of my job, dealing with this mysterious health issue. And the response was basically, hope you're doing better. When can you come back? And that right there just did not sit right with me. After 15 years of dedication to this company, I quit. My husband and I decided to leave the US entirely and try something completely different. We've been building our digital business ever since, and we're settled in Bangkok currently, which has been a blessing in disguise. But this whole experience taught me some things. 7 things actually. And I'm not saying these are universal truths or that everyone should pack up and move to Thailand tomorrow. God knows I'm still trying to figure this out myself. But maybe sharing what I've learned can help someone who's also feeling trapped. The someday trap is dangerous. I spent years saying, someday I'll travel more. Someday I'll start that business. Someday I'll figure out what I actually want to do with my life. Someday became this magical future time when everything would align perfectly and I'd finally have permission to live differently. But here's the thing about someday. It never actually comes. There's always another reason to wait, another thing that needs to happen first, and another box that needs to be checked. When my hands went numb and I couldn't work anymore, someday became today, whether I was ready or not. And you know what? I wasn't ready. Nobody ever is. But that forced urgency showed me that I'd been using someday as a way to avoid hard decisions. The inflammation was scary, but in a weird way, it was also liberating. It stripped away all my excuses for waiting. My body was literally telling me that someday was now, and I finally listened. Money buys comfort, but not contentment. I had a decent salary, good benefits, the whole package. On paper, I was doing well. I could afford nice dinners, international trips, all the stuff that's supposed to make you happy. But I still felt like I was missing something. There's this quote that I love. The things you own end up owning you. I felt like I was trapped in my own lifestyle, working to afford things I'd bought to make myself feel better with working a job I didn't like. It was this weird circular trap. When we left the US, we had to downsize everything, sold most of our stuff, figured out how to live with less, and honestly, I don't miss any of it. I do miss my people, my parents, my family, my friends, but that's about it. Sitting in our condo in Bangkok, working on projects we actually care about, making money online, but feeling infinitely more content. It's like I finally understand the difference between comfort and happiness. Money is important, don't get me wrong, but I realized I was confusing financial security with life satisfaction. They're not the same thing at all. Burnout doesn't look the same for everyone. I kept waiting to feel burnt out in the traditional sense, the completely exhausted, crying at my desk, having panic attacks. When that didn't happen, I thought I was fine. But burnout for me looked different. It looked like going through the motions every day without really feeling anything. It looked like numbness, and I'm not just talking about the physical numbness in my hands, it was emotional numbness too. I realized I hadn't felt genuinely excited about anything in months. I wasn't angry or sad or stressed, I was just nothing. Like I was sleepwalking through my own life. When people think of burnout, they think of like dramatic breakdowns, but sometimes it's more subtle. Sometimes it's just a slow erosion of caring about anything at all. And that might actually be more dangerous because it's harder to recognize. Life is happening in the gaps. I finally understood this when we started traveling. I'd spent so many years focused on the big milestones, the salary increases, major life events, but I was missing everything in between. It's kind of like the movie Perfect Days. The main character, Hirayama, lives this quiet, repetitive life, cleaning toilets, driving the same routes, listening to cassette tapes. On paper, it looks boring, maybe even meaningless. But the way he notices the light through the trees, the joy he finds in his small routines, and the dignity he brings to the simplest tasks, that's where you realize life is actually happening.
今度は今度。今は今。
今は今。
Life isn't happening during your annual performance review or when you finally get that corner office. It's happening in the morning coffee conversations with your loved ones. It's on a random Tuesday when you discover a new neighborhood. It's in those moments when you're just existing without any agenda. Here in Bangkok, we have time for those gaps now. We can spend an afternoon just wandering through the market without feeling guilty about not being productive. We can have lunch that lasts over 2 hours because we want to, not because we're rushing back to a meeting. I used to think those moments were just spaces in between real life. Now I think they might be the most real part of life. Other people's definitions of success don't have to be yours. Everyone kept asking us if we were successful in our new life. And I realized they were measuring success by their own metrics. How much money we were making, whether we had a real business, if we were building toward traditional goals. But success for me now looks like waking up without an alarm clock. It looks like my husband and I actually enjoying each other's company instead of just being two exhausted people sharing a living space. It looks like my hands working properly again. Success looks like building something that matters to us, even if it doesn't impress anyone else. It looks like having time to think, to read, to actually live instead of just survive. The corporate definition of success nearly killed my spirit, and I'm not being dramatic. It literally made me sick. It was either I get the vaccine or I lose my job. Why would I keep measuring myself by those unfair standards? You can redesign your life one small change at a time. It started with me finally admitting to myself that I wasn't happy with the so-called choice I was given at work: comply with the vaccine mandate or lose my livelihood. A decision that felt less like free will and more like coercion over my body. I stayed, got the vaccine, and as a result, got sick from it. Then I admitted this to my husband, then I told my mom, then we started focusing more on our online business, then we saved money, and then having the conversation about maybe trying something completely different. Each step was small enough that it didn't feel overwhelming, but they added up to something that completely transformed our lives. Even now, we are not done redesigning. We're constantly tweaking, adjusting, figuring out what works and what doesn't. It's not like we arrived at some perfect life and now we're set forever. It's an ongoing process, and I think that's actually the point. You don't need permission to choose a different path. I kept waiting for someone to tell me it was okay to leave. My coworkers, my manager, my doctors, I wanted someone to say, yes, you should definitely quit your job, and here's why it's a good idea. That validation never came, but I am beyond blessed to have the most supportive parents and husband who have helped me throughout my life. Most people thought we were crazy for leaving stable jobs to travel the world and build an online business. Some people still think we're crazy. And you know what? That's okay. This is my life, my health, my choice to make. Nobody else has to live with the consequences of staying in a job that was making me sick. Nobody else has to deal with the regret of never trying something different. The moment I stopped waiting for permission and started giving it to myself, that's when everything changed. When my manager called to ask when I'd be back, I responded with, I'm not coming back. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. Like I was finally taking responsibility for my own life instead of letting someone else's agenda determine how I spend my days. So where does this leave me? Honestly, sitting here in Bangkok at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, talking about this to you guys. My husband is sitting at the table working on our website right now. We're making enough money to make a living comfortably here and building something meaningful enough to retire my parents. We're definitely not rich by American standards, but I feel rich in ways that have nothing to do with money. Rich in time, in choices, in the ability to actually listen to my body when it's trying to tell me something. I'm not here to tell you that you should quit your job and move to Southeast Asia. That's not what this is about. I'm just sharing my process, my messy, imperfect journey toward trying to live more intentionally. Some days I still wonder if we made the right choice, but then I remember what it feels like to sit in that office chair with numb hands, knowing that nobody really cared if I was okay as long as I showed up. And I know we made the only choice we could live with. The inflammation that forced me out of that life was scary at the time, but in retrospect, it was also a gift. Maybe sometimes our bodies know what our minds refuse to acknowledge, that the life we're living isn't the life we're meant to be living. We're all just figuring this out as we go, right? The difference is I'd rather figure it out on my own terms, in a place where I can actually breathe, with hands that still work, and a nervous system that's finally learning how to slow down. If you're stuck in your own situation, I can't tell you exactly when or how to leave, but I can tell you this. Sometimes the scariest choice ends up being the one that saves you, and you don't have to leap without a net. Build your financial stability, stack your options, then decide. That way, when you walk, you're walking towards something, not just away. You won't always see the payoff in the moment, but momentum comes after the first step. So don't overthink it. Just start.